All right, we're going to talk about the importance of the molar ratio in chemistry as it relates to stoichiometry. It is honestly one of the cornerstones for everything that we do in class, and we've been talking about this for, the whole semester, actually the whole year. You guys from your unit analysis, I'm sure you remember the picture of the one Professor Rowland from the University of California in Santa Cruz. If it's important enough to have someone go to the trouble of putting ink all across their back in terms of molar ratio, it's a pretty darn important thing in chemistry. But be that as it may, we're going to go through kind of how it relates to everything in life. Honestly, when you think about it, whenever you're building something, it doesn't matter. If you want it to be a replica of something else, you've got to go through some sort of a scale, okay? Whether it's going to be a recipe like what you see above here, or whether it's going to be something else in life like building a house. You've always got to go to some sort of scale. So that's kind of what this is a little bit in terms of this molar ratio. Okay, so we're going to relate it back to this recipe a little bit that you guys, we probably talked about, or at least you've had access to within your unit analysis. So when we look at this recipe, this is one of the best recipes in the world for chocolate chip cookies. I haven't made it for years, but honestly, it's a great one. So if I want to determine, for example, I've got to cut the recipe, or if I want to increase the number of portions of the recipe that I can make for someone. For example, if I'm given like 10 eggs, all right, so I'm given 10 eggs. And I want to know, for example, I guess I should learn how to spell eggs a little better. I want to know how many teaspoons of baking soda that I have to have. Well, I wouldn't want to guess on that because, it costs a lot of money to make this, number one. And number two, I want this to taste like I want it to taste, okay? So remember, anytime that we are messing around with a given or an unknown, or anytime that we are using any kind of an equation of any sort, any kind of problem, we always go from our given to our unknown. So we're going to go from number of eggs to the baking soda, how much baking soda is going to be required, okay? Well, what I need from that, in terms of being able to determine what my components are going to be, I need to have some sort of a ratio, and my ratio comes from the recipe here. I know that for every one egg, like what I show here, okay, I have to have 0.75 teaspoons of baking soda. So that becomes my ratio. So my basic equation or pathway here, my BEQ, is always from our given to our unknown. So it's going to be from eggs to baking soda. Well, I have to have the ratio from someplace, okay? That ratio comes from this equation right here. Okay? This equation is just like a chemical equation. Each one of these things are reactants, all right, and your products are going to be the cookies that you make, okay? So I know that it takes, in terms of this ratio, I know that for every one egg, that's equivalent to 0.75 teaspoons, and I'm going to put teaspoons of baking soda. I'm going to say BS there. Okay, that can be taken a lot of ways. It's baking soda, folks. It's baking soda, okay? So when I'm going to go ahead and create my equation here, I'm going to start with my given. All right, I've got 10 eggs. Okay, so I'm going to start with my 10 eggs, as I always would. Once again, spelling eggs is ridiculously difficult for me. Okay, and I'm going to use my ratio from my equation. And my ratio, as I spelled out, is right over here. All right, remember, I'm going to put what I want to get rid of on the bottom, okay? So eggs is going to go down here. And I'm going to cut what I'm going to go to on the top, and that's going to be baking soda. Okay, and in this particular case, okay, the label is going to be teaspoons. So for every one egg, I've got 0.75 teaspoons, okay? My eggs will factor out, okay? My numerical value for this is going to be 7.5. So it's going to be 7.5 teaspoons of baking soda. Okay? It is that simple as it relates to doing this, okay? So that molar ratio, or that ratio in terms of this recipe, is just like a molar ratio that you're going to deal with as it relates to a chemical equation. And in the next video, I'm going to go over that. Have a good one.